Hey, everybody. Welcome to Legit Takes. It's another awesome episode with myself, Tony Vandermark, and my awesome co-host, Lionel Jones. We're very excited to be here with you. We're going to talk all things Wolves, Twins, and a sport to be named later. A sport you may be familiar with. Stick around for that. Again, we're happy to be here. Legit Takes. This is episode number 4, Mr. Jones.
I can't believe it. It's gone fast, Tony.
It has gone fast. It's just very interesting how this idea kind of came out of nowhere, and now this is just flowing. We're just having fun.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of good feedback. You know, a lot of people that listen and watch the YouTube channel is giving us nothing but love. And so we really appreciate that. Like and subscribe.
Appreciate that as well. And we do not coordinate outfits or backgrounds. But we're both wearing Twins gear, and it's not just because the Wolves had a rough night. But we are going to start off with that, not just because we need to get out of the way, but because we need to vent, right? We're Minnesotans. We have to understand what's wrong with us, what's wrong with our teams when things go wrong. To recap, from my position, I was at the restaurant last night with my son for the first half. The sound wasn't on. We were watching the entire game the whole time, every play. My take was not the same team, not the same effort. It's like the crowd didn't exist to the team. I don't know if they just played too loose and played like they had all heard everything positive the last few days, and they didn't know how to go back out there and fight for Game 3 again, or what, right? Lionel, what's your initial take on what you saw last night, that craziness?
Well, Tony, if I didn't have something going on last night, I probably would have been at that game, so I probably would be more angry than what I am last night if I paid money for those tickets to go to that basketball game. You know, this is why when the NBA creates these playoff schedules, it's really weird how they stagger these games. And I thought because they had such a layoff, you know, it's human nature. If you look at the first 2 games in this series, the Timberwolves knew they were playing the world champions, and they came in with a certain mindset. They prepared for that. And I think this past week they got an opportunity to listen to all the national news about how great their defense was, the best, defense in the league. And I think they read the press clippings and started to believe, things that weren't actually true. And so human nature is when you start feeling really good about yourself, you take your foot off the pedal. And I think you saw that last night during that game.
Yeah, there's a lot of stats to break it down, right? I just thought the few takeaways I had was urgency, lack of urgency. There were certain players that were playing to their normal level on defense. I thought McDaniels was great at the top of the key. I thought he was still in the faces of people. Once the ball started moving, I don't know what it was. I saw us doubling down on people that we never doubled down on, and all of a sudden the guy's wide open in the corner again, over and over and over again. It wasn't just once or twice. After timeouts, after the end of the quarter, after the end of the first half, it was still happening. To me, that's just... There's a little bit of human nature there, but if you want to go out and win this thing, then you have to really want it. So I don't care if we pick apart the offense and say, well, they were settling for jumpers early on. They're only setting initial picks at the top of the key and shooting. They weren't doing a lot of drive and dish off plays. It all starts with the defense with this team. If the defense isn't there, it doesn't matter, because then we're relying on our inconsistent shooting, which, let's be honest, it's streaky at times, just like any other team. So defense first, effort first, and then if that's not there, we're in trouble. What do you think?
Well, I think defense, is effort. And, the one problem that I have with the Timberwolves and with a lot of the Minnesota teams when they get in these situations, whether it's the NFC championship game or what have you, the problem that I have is the sense of urgency from the team. Like, everything was set up last night for the Timberwolves to perform. And, I hope we don't get a lot of pushback in terms of jumping off the bandwagon, because we are not jumping off the bandwagon. But here's the deal. You had a sold-out Target Center arena last night. The city was excited. I don't understand how you come into that game and you don't have a sense of urgency for that game. You're playing the world champs. And again, I honestly don't have a problem with the Minnesota Timberwolves losing that game. It's the fashion in which they lost that game. Anthony Edwards People have been comparing him to Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and well, they should. I mean, the guy is having a
Right.
fantastic year. We would not be here if it wasn't for Anthony Edwards and what he's done throughout the season. But he only took 15 shots last night.
Yeah.
15 shots in a game where you're up 2-0 and you've got the world champions on the ropes. Now,
Yep.
Anthony Edwards came out and said he wants to kill everything in his sight. Well, as I told a couple of my buddies, I don't know if you watch a lot of horror movies, but when you watch Friday the 13th and Michael Myers and Halloween, if you don't kill those guys, what happens? They
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah.
And so this is a situation where we've given the Denver Nuggets a little bit of life. And I hope we don't look back at this game and think woulda, coulda, shoulda. Because again,
Yeah.
it's not the loss, it's the importance of the sense of urgency coming into that game. And I just didn't see that from the Timberwolves last night.
Yeah. The big moment for me when I realized at the moment and afterwards, where I was probably right about this, was I think it was 26-20 or 28-20. We came out of a timeout, and everything we did was to fight just to stay relevant and stay close. Make a couple of threes, get a couple of stops, maybe come back and push to get close. And then the timeout happened. I'm like, okay, now they're going to come to Anthony Edwards and say, is this your game? Do you want this game? We're going to run the ball through you. The offense is going to go through you like it's the fourth quarter, because if we don't do this right now, we're in trouble. And they came out, and a couple of bench players shot 3-pointers and missed. I just thought, okay, it's like they don't even care to put the game through their best player. That's not just on Anthony Edwards. That's on the coaches. And I didn't understand it at all, because he's had great first halves. He's not just a second half player. And your biggest player has to step up at the moments and demand the ball from the coaches and his teammates. I know he wasn't particularly hot on the other going, but he was making shots. And when he drives and he makes people uncomfortable, people get open. You don't have to just throw the ball down into Towns and watch him try to bang around and throw a ball up in the air and hope it goes in. My son and I counted 5 missed layups in that stretch when it was in the 20s. 5. And then they went into that 15-point lead. You can't miss layups. I don't care who you are. So if you're driving down low and you're giving the ball to the big men and they're missing layups, or other guys are missing layups, or Conley's going in against these guys and missing a high off the glass shot, then give it to your guy who can make a difference and get in there and stop whatever it is you're doing. And when they didn't do that, I turned into that negative Minnesota morose, why am I here? I just wasted 2 hours of my life fan, because I have that in me, unfortunately, from all the years. So I don't like to see that behavior where I can tell in advance before the second half even that things aren't looking good, but that's exactly what happened. And for them not to recognize that in game gives me a little bit of hesitancy on their in-game coaching adjustments moving forward, just based on how I saw that. Unless there's something wrong with Edwards, or he wasn't feeling it, something else we don't know because we're not there in the huddle. Did you see that too? I mean, what was going on there?
Yeah, no, Tony, I think you're 1000% correct. I think your perception of what went on is absolutely fantastic. And I remember the timeout that you're talking about. I thought, okay, here's where the Timberwolves are going to make its run. But where you hit the nail dead on the head is, I think those messages has to come from the coaching staff or the head coach, where you say, Ant, okay, this is your time. You need to take
Yep.
the game over. We need you to be a little bit more aggressive. We need for you to shoot the ball a little bit more. And I didn't see those messages coming from the coaching staff. Obviously, we weren't on the sideline, but I didn't see any proof of those messages being sent to Anthony Edwards. I thought he was a little passive at times. The one thing you don't want to do is abandon what you've been doing all year. And what they've been doing all
Right.
year is playing pretty good team basketball. But this is the playoffs. And I think there's going to be an element where there's going to be times where Anthony Edwards has to take the game over. And like you said, I don't know whether he was feeling ill or whether he was injured. I know he took a screen from Jokic early in that game,
Mm-hmm.
and he was rubbing his shoulder and trying to loosen it up, but I didn't see any signs that was bothering him throughout the course of the game. I just think it was a lack of aggression, and I just think you're 100% right. These guys have got to send messages to their players in certain situations in these games where here's what you got to do to get us over the hump. And I just thought Anthony Edwards is a fantastic player. But if you want to put him in the category of the Kobe Bryants, the Kevin Garnetts, and the Michael Jordan, think back to the Michael Jordan era.
He would
Was
have
there
never
ever
let
a
that happen
playoff
in a
game?
million years. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there ever a playoff game where Jordan took a passive role in any one of those games, especially when they were up 2-zip? And I
Oh
think
my
that's
gosh,
the
no.
difference between being really, really good and being great. In those moments, Anthony Edwards has to understand, hey, I've got to shine.
So I think, I hope that the national media's questions, and I haven't watched the post game press conferences because my behavior after a loss is to not be very journalistic and to shut down as a fan. So then I go into other things. I think about what I'm going to do tomorrow, what I have to take care of at home, what I want to do for myself just to get me out of that mindset of being negative that I saw this happen. And I had no control over it. I have problems with things I don't have control over, right? I want to be involved and enjoy something that's going moderately well and say, oh, we won or lost. But if it starts to be a train wreck, I disengage. So coming from that knowledge standpoint perspective, I will go back and listen now to some of the interviews. But I really hope that some of those were about Anthony Edwards taking questions like, hey, did you feel like you should have taken over things earlier? Or maybe they'll happen today on the media day in between or whatever. Something of that nature. I hope somebody asked that question because we're not there yet to be able to get to him to ask those questions ourselves, right? So if he can answer those questions in the right way, then I feel like there's a legitimate hope that game 4 is ours. And because like my son came into the studio office here before we started and said, what in the world was going on? And how come um, we can't even blame this on the refs? We
Yeah,
can't. It wasn't
I
the refs.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's a portion of the population out there that would say the refereeing was bad last night, and you got your conspiracy theorists saying, oh, they didn't want the Timberwolves to sweep the Nuggets. I've heard some of those things, but I don't think that decided the game.
Right.
Again, I saw Anthony Edwards at the end of that game being the leader that he is. He was clapping his hands and he was telling the players as they were coming to the bench, hey, get your heads up. This is a series. They got us one. It's the first team to four. And that was the correct message, to send to his teammates. The only problem with that is that you're giving life to the world champions. And so that
Yeah.
mindset could be a little bit dangerous if you look at this thing in the long term and you don't close it out when you have an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, some of the stats from last night, I'm not a huge stats guy, but the things that stood out to me were we were outshot by 10% from the field, okay, which is usually the sign if you're blown out. But it was much worse than that in the first half. It was probably 15 or 20%. We might have been shooting in the high 20s, early 30s. Not great. 18% better from three. That's how much Denver was. I can't believe how many shots they made in that first half and just knocked down good looks and even some contested looks. And Murray taking his normal position of getting the ball at the top of the key, fading away to the right, draining mid-range jumpers to long-range jumpers, no problems. It's like his calf problems are gone. That's another big problem is that if he's healthy, what in the world are we going to do about him? Back to my position on the early show that we did before the series started. How are we going to handle Murray if he gets going? A couple other stats that were interesting. Towns and Edwards were both minus 32. Okay, fine. We're blown out. They're minus 32. Gobert only played 5 or 6 less minutes and was only minus 10. So, why? Right? So, if I'm in the film room and I'm in the stats world looking at that, I want to know what we did differently with Gobert on the floor and what can we do to make sure whatever that was going on to maximize that. Was it because I don't know, there could be a lot of reasons. I'm not going to speculate, right? That's just one interesting stat. And another one that's interesting is when I've been in the Target Center, and I've been in there a few times shooting around with you back in the early 90s with some of your teams you had in there, and I got to go down the floor and shoot. The arena and the background, when you're shooting, especially when you're not looking at the backboard, you're looking at the crowd, right? You got the rim and the crowd. And that's all you see. They're looking at something they don't usually see. They're looking at white. I was wondering, as you as a player, if you thought the crowd could have had a little bit of a difference in the background shooting because they just couldn't hit anything. The last point before I let you talk about that, the tickets for Game 3 were about 350, 360 for the upper deck for the cheapest ticket with
Yep.
fees,
Yep.
and it was about 950 for the lower deck tickets. For game 4 already, it's down to 315 for the upper deck, but only 585 for the lower deck. So we've had a almost half price discount on game 4. Speaking of bandwagon and the Sunday effect, maybe people not wanting to go and pay $900 anymore, that dropped off the cliff.
Oh yeah.
So what do you think about those stats, those plus minuses and the background and stuff like that? As a player, what do you think?
Well, I think it's very valid. I think the white background makes the depth perception go away. So I don't know if that's the reason why, the Denver Nuggets shot 48% from three. Um, but they did shoot the ball better last night. And I think that, the combinations of players on the floor in terms of the plus minuses with Anthony Edwards and Carl Anthony Towns, it's just a situation. It's pretty simple. They just got to come in and play a little bit better. I thought what made a huge difference last night, Tony, was the refs, and here's where I'll blame the refs. I felt like they allowed Jokovic to pretty much do whatever he wanted. I mean, on every
Yes,
drive, he was
he did.
extending the elbow. On any layup, he had his elbow
Yep.
out. I mean, so it's very tough to defend a person, especially a guy that's his size, when you're just allowing him to initiate all the contact. So
Right.
one on one, you really don't have a chance. And I think that attributed to the Timberwolves possibly doing a little bit more double teaming than they
Early
wanted to
on.
do,
Yeah.
which left those perimeter guys open. That's why they shot 48%. Think about this, 48% from three. The
Game
Denver
over.
Nuggets almost hit half the 3-point shots that they shot. And there was no sign of that in the first two games. And the Timberwolves, this was supposed to be a hostile environment.
Yeah.
So I think, along with the all white, the depth perception, again, I think you're very astute in what you're thinking. I think you hit the nail dead on the head. I think that had something, to do with the depth perception. And then the double teaming that you mentioned, I think came from just Jokic being able to do what he wanted in the paint. And I think it affected the way the Timberwolves were able to play defense last night.
Yeah, they probably went back to the film and said, "Hey, Jokic, you need to initiate the first chuck into somebody, so you can push people back, a la Shaq when he get the ball down low and he just throw a shoulder and gain another 5 feet in space and throw another
Absolutely.
shoulder, and then he'd be dunking on you because he moved you back twice."
Yep.
So when I saw that, I'm like, "Well, that's a foul." Well, it's not really a foul. It's establishment of where you need to be, and it was on Denver to realize that, and they figured it out. That is a big danger. So we need to figure out how to get better. I don't know. This is where I kind of stop and think, as a coach, what can you even do? Just like they thought, what can they even do if they're all over us and they're not calling fouls? So the refereeing does have a huge impact on how you can coach, how you can play, how you can shoot, how you can do anything, really. So, and it's the only game I can think of that's like that, other than baseball. If the umpire's calling everything on the outside corner that's outside, now as a hitter, you have to swing at everything. I can't think of any other game where the officials can influence everything so much. So, that being said, I hope it's an entertaining series. That's the main thing. Uh, and that the Timberwolves have a better start, because you can't start down right away in your own building. It just takes the crowd out of it. And Denver knew that and they took advantage of it. Um, did you see the same thing I did where just to pick apart the offense for a couple of minutes, where in the first half, I felt like it was the old the Gophers did this for quite a while. Now they're not doing it anymore, but they would just go down the floor and they would make one pick, one move, and get a guy open and shoot. Or they would dribble it up and wait for that pick to happen just so they could kill the clock a little longer, so it wasn't a shot at 16 seconds or 14 seconds on the clock, on the shot clock. But as soon as they got that first open look, they'd usually take it. There wasn't a lot of like moving the ball, setting a screen down low, getting a guy open one on one down low for an option to pass out or shoot. It felt like it was very top of the key. And I watched the Nuggets posture, and they were very much stronger down low. If Towns got the ball, he was getting nailed pretty quick. And Gobert just, I don't know, he didn't have it last night offensively. And Naz Reid was way off too. So when all three big guys are off down low, how do you do that as a coach? How do you handle that? Like, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, I think your point is well stated. Watching the Timberwolves offense last night, they ran a lot of two-man game. So basically what that is pick and roll offense on one side of the floor. You got your three other teammates on the other side of the floor. And what I thought Denver did a really good job of is staying at home on the weak side of the floor, because Rudy Gobert was just named Defensive Player of the Year. But I don't think anyone would argue that he's nowhere close to being the Offensive Player of the Year. So if
Yeah,
Rudy Gobert is not dunking the basketball, honestly, I think he has a hard time scoring. And I think the
he
Denver
does.
Nuggets saw that last night. So on those two-man games, they just dropped cover defense so they couldn't hit the roll. And now when you come off that screen, you have nowhere to go at the basketball. So it's almost like you're playing ISO basketball. You got to shoot it a little bit quickly. And I think it took the Timberwolves out of rhythm. I thought it was a great adjustment by the Denver Nuggets, and I expect for them to kind of stick with this in the games to follow. So the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to have to figure out how to make shots and how to incorporate Rudy Gobert to at least be an offensive threat where he's not, right underneath the basket. That's the difference between having Rudy Gobert in a basketball game and Naz Reid. Naz Reid
Right.
can pick and pop. He can step out and shoot the three. He can drive to the basket and dunk on you. Rudy Gobert just doesn't have that in his toolbox. So
Right.
essentially, with Rudy Gobert on the floor, the Timberwolves are a little bit easier to defend in
Yes.
regards to not having Naz Reid out there. So I think that's the issue. They're going to have to go back to the film room and watch a little bit, and we'll see what adjustments they make.
And when my son saw him miss his first two free throws, we just kind of put our heads down and went, "Oh no, the ball's not going into Gobert for a little while again."
Yeah,
And sure enough, he only had like 5 shots all night long. So it was strange to watch how fast things can change. And like you said, the long break, it gives you a lot of film study and practice time and healing time. And now it's almost like a whole new series started, and Denver's just trying to get back 2-2. So it's a 3-game series, which is mental to think that that can really happen.
yeah.
But after last night, I wouldn't be surprised if the line is Denver by 3. I haven't looked. But if I'm an analyst and I'm a gambling analyst, I'm looking at that saying, well, I don't know if they can adjust to what Denver did.
A lot of
Okay.
pressure on the Wolves, Tony. A lot
Oh,
of pressure
it's
on the Wolves now.
yes, absolutely. So on to the next thing. Uh, Game 4. Let's just get a take. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think the score is going to be? What do you realistically think is going to come out of this game for both teams?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be a closer game because now I think last night was a wake-up call for the Timberwolves, or at least I hope it was a wake-up call. And I think sometimes losses are good, and this is a loss that I'm hopeful has refocused the coaching staff and refocused the team. Again, I know it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse, but my biggest issue last night was not the missed shots. My biggest thing last night was just the sense of urgency and the killer instinct. And so I think you're going to see a better version of the Minnesota Timberwolves. I don't think you're going to see that version of the Minnesota Timberwolves for the rest of the playoffs,
Right.
because I think it was a really, really good wake up call. I think the Denver Nuggets are going to go with their game plan that worked in game 3. I think they're going to stay home on the weak side. They're going to limit the 3-point shots that the Timberwolves can make. They have no fear that Rudy Gobert is going to pick and pop. He can't really score in space. So they're going to continue to drop cover that. I think there are times where they feel like the Timberwolves can be pressured. If you notice in last night's game, they were full court pressing a little bit, and you rarely ever see that,
No,
in the NBA. And
never.
essentially what that's doing is putting a little bit more pressure on your perimeter, especially your point guard, and it takes you out of the rhythm of your offense. It's genius because, by the time you get the ball across half court against a little bit of pressure, you're dealing with a shorter shot clock. And so now you got to rush a little bit, take faster shots. So I thought that was a great adjustment by the Denver Nuggets. But I'm hopeful that the Minnesota Timberwolves will use Naz Reid a little bit more. I think he
Mm-hmm.
causes the Denver Nuggets a lot of problems, especially because he can shoot the 3 at the 5 spot. And I expect Anthony Edwards to come out a little bit more aggressive than he did in game 3. Same with Karl Anthony Towns. So in terms of who's going to win or lose that game, it's 50-50. But I do definitely think you're going to get a better version of the Minnesota Timberwolves on Sunday night.
I thought for sure I'd get a call out of you. Wolves 6, Wolves by 8, Nuggets by 2. I'm gonna be a little more brazen. I'm gonna make a side prediction though, almost like a fantasy betting thing. If Anthony Edwards gets 35 or more, we win. He needs 35, not 32, not 33. He needs 35 or more, and I'm assuming he'll get like 40. Because usually, off a night like this, and he had the two great games and the other great games in the other series. This is his off game. Okay. He's going home right now, motivated to take over, and he's going to get out there and really dictate things. And everything that we just talked about that Denver did to adjust, they don't have film on how we do that at home with their new adjustments. So I think he's going to change everything. He has to, of how they've been defending this game 3. And then game 4 is going to, we have to turn their defense into chaos. We have to have him be as good or better than Murray. That shouldn't be much to ask. He has to do that. If he can do that, we win. So that being said, I have faith he'll have 35 or more. I think it's Wolves by 6. This is what we're gonna hope for anyway, right? 6-point win. Back to Denver, up 3-1. All right, so the series in general, I'm just going to start with a take here. Based on that little prediction, that puts us up 3-1 back to Denver. I think they hold. And I think we come back and we win in 6. My original prediction before the series started was in 5. I might be off a game. That's my positivity that's still left into the team, into the situation, because there's just so many people on that team that can shoot well. We just need one or two guys to help Edwards bring him over the top so he's not completely alone. Those side 3-point shooters, if they can help him, that's when we're deadly, and then they can't guard, just like we couldn't guard them last night when they moved the ball around. So Edwards key, move forward, Wolves in 6. What's your prediction on the series?
I think the Wolves in 6. I originally said, before the series started, that if the Wolves won this series, it would be in 6. I think they take care of business on Sunday night. And I agree with you going back to Denver. I think they're going to be walking into a hostile environment, and I think Denver will get the job done there. But I think the Minnesota Timberwolves is going to come back home and close them out. I think this loss, even though it's scary because of the way it happened, I think it's a wake-up call for the Timberwolves. I'm not panicking. I'm not worried about the series. I think they come back and they win it in 6.
Awesome. All right, on to the next thing. We're going to talk Twins for a couple of minutes.
Oh, my.
I got one of the original jerseys from when the stadium opened. So this was a Joe Mauer jersey, and it's got the patches on it. And when I bought it from the guy in the shop, I said, how original is this? And he said, well, if Mauer rips his jersey, you could take yours off and throw it to him, and he could wear it on the field. The reason I bring that up is a lot of people have been talking about the jerseys being garbage, and you can see through them, and their legs are ripping when they slide into bases and stuff right now. It's like, where did they get these jerseys made? Like some kind of a joke factory in who knows what country? Like, what is going on? And so baseball admitted, yeah, they're bad. We're going to fix them. Not till next year. What? So I thought I'd wear this original jersey just to remind everybody they used to make really cool jerseys. They're really awesome. Anyway, so back when the Wolves started in the playoffs, the Twins were, our first show, I think I made a comment that here's how much the Twins deserve our time. They had beaten the White Sox 3 or 4 games, and they beat the Angels a few games. I said, they're beating teams from high school. I don't care. And we spent like 20 seconds on them. Okay, fast forward. They finished off the Angels. They finished off the White Sox back in Chicago. Then they played, I'm going to remember here for a second. I'm trying to remember who they played after that. Then they played the Red Sox here at home.
Yeah.
And that was a series where, okay, I'm a big Red Sox fan on the side, but I don't talk about that because I'm from Minnesota. Red Sox, I know. It's the Ortiz factor. We let him go because he was injury prone. Only became the best clutch hitter in the history of the league on hitting sliders in the ground to win, playoff games in the 10th inning against the Yankees. What did we miss out as a team, right? Nothing. Of course not. A lot of sarcasm there. Anyway, the Twins went on to beat the Red Sox 2 out of 3. And what was more important about that is they lost 9-2 the third game. Okay, their streak is over. Their 12-game streak is over. The sausage is in trouble. And I'll mention what the sausage is in a second. But then the Mariners came into town. Now we're still at home. This is what helps, I think, a little bit. We win the next game right away. As the Twins, you want your team to come back after a losing streak, any team, any sport. And if you lose that losing streak, you don't want to start a problem, right? They won. Then they lost right away again, but then they won 2 in a row again. And then they go into Toronto last night, and they win again. Okay, so I'm trying to process this. While the Timberwolves were 6-0 in the playoffs, the Twins are not on TV on Comcast Xfinity, which blacks out 70% of the viewers, 80% of the viewers in the Twin Cities. Do people care? No, because it's early May, but they've won 16 of 18. How often has that happened? Never since almost 91.
Very rarely.
Oh my gosh. And so here's the interesting side story that some people probably aware of, some people are maybe not. At the beginning of the winning streak, they had a sausage, like a Polish sausage, that somebody just said, "Hey, rub your bat on this when you go up there." Kind of like Major League, like,
Yeah.
Jobu or whatever, rub your bat on the chicken, whatever it was.
Baseball always has
Superstition.
those kind of superstitions. It's
Yes.
crazy.
Crazy superstitions. So they have this sausage. Okay. They rub their bats on it, they win. They keep rubbing their bats on it, they win. The sausage is 4 or 5 days old. The player, I forget who it was, wraps it in a Ziploc bag and another wrapper so they can keep rubbing their bats on the sausage even though it's in protective custody from itself exploding and all of its grossness everywhere because it's not kept in the refrigerator during the day. This is a sausage in a bag that they're touching their bats with it. And it got to the point where Rocco, the manager's like, okay, we won 9 in a row. The players believe in the sausage. I'm a little concerned if the sausage bag ever opens up and what's going to happen to the players that are nearby that sausage when it opens up, because it's got to be really bad right now. They won 12 in a row. They lost, right? They kept the sausage. They did not renew the sausage. They kept their faith in the existing sausage. It's still in
Smart.
the bag. 18 games later, they have the same sausage. Here's the funny part. The sausage made it across the border to Toronto. Somehow, a dog didn't sniff it or whatever in the baggage because they go through TSA just like we do,
Oh,
right? They
yeah.
have their own customs thing.
I've been there.
Yeah. So 18 games in of this great streak, and the sausage is still, I wouldn't say alive, but the superstition is alive and well. Another thing is that the Twins had a starting pitcher who was not winning any of his games. And I'm going to play ignorant for a second because I can't remember his name. He was going to be relied upon many times for the team. He lost 4 in a row, got blown up every single game. They sent him down to the minors, brought up another guy. This is when the streak started. The reason I bring this up is teams hang on to players so long. Quarterbacks in the NFL, the best shooting guard on a team. He's going to get through it. He's just a little banged up or whatever. The Twins finally made that call to say, we got to have this guy go down to the minors in St. Paul. We got to bring somebody else up. One guy and one sausage makes a winning streak, apparently, right? Because the lineup didn't change. They got Correa back a few days ago. He hasn't really made a huge impact. He's good, don't get me wrong, but it's not like he's beating the ball over the fence every single game. It's the same team. Royce Lewis is still hurt. He's been out for weeks and weeks and weeks. Now, the last point I'll make is the whole entire Central Division is above 500, save for the White Sox. That's also crazy. The Twins were 10 back 3 weeks ago. They're 2.5 back now. That's also crazy. So all the while, the Wolves have been showing the town what it's all about to be a Wolves fan and win in the playoffs and crush these teams. One game they lose, and the prices for the tickets plummet. I know they were high to begin with.
Yeah.
And now I wonder how many fans are going to be scrambling to find a way to watch the Twins at the bar today and tomorrow just to have something positive to glom onto, because we were on such a high, right? Oh, they're winning. They're just killing it. Oh, they lost. Let's go watch the Twins. They're killing it too. At least we have 2 teams, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving forward, they got a big lift last night when Griffin Jacks threw a pitch and it went off of his backside and it rolled to the first baseman and they won on that play. So they didn't lose that game in the end. They held on to win. Good luck is happening with them. It makes no sense. Great luck was happening with the Wolves. It makes no sense. Let's just hope that the Twins know and their sausage rub off on the Timberwolves to win game 4, and we'll all be happier as fans.
Well, two things about that, Tony. Going back to the story about the sausage, that was a fantastic story, by the way. First time I had heard that, didn't know that was going on. That's amazing to me, but it doesn't surprise me, all these superstitions when it comes to Major League Baseball. Who is the guy years ago? He's probably going to be a Hall of Famer. I think it was Nomar Garciaparra for the Boston Red Sox, maybe, who used to just unbuckle his gloves, take them off, put them back on every time a pitch was thrown. Just just unbelievable things like that permeate throughout the game of baseball. It's really interesting. And then,
OCD. Yeah.
yeah, back to the Twins. Obviously, this is a fantastic winning streak. Do you think this is something that the Minnesota Twins can sustain? I mean, you're not going to win 16 of 18 all the time, but do you think they can be more consistent winners throughout the summer?
Well, baseball is all about your number one starter stopping or starting streaks. Uh, your 2 through 5 starters matter. Don't get me wrong. But if Lopez goes out on the hill and wins his games, and they know that they have that to look forward to, it permeates down to the rest of the team, right? So Ryan's a great pitcher. He won last night. Lopez is a great pitcher. He wins almost every game. They have like Lopez Day every time he comes out. So in baseball, it's about starting pitching first, just like I've been talking about the Wolves defense first. And then the guys behind you as a pitcher, are they catching the ball? Are they making great plays? They are. Buxton is still hurt. Royce Lewis has been hurt. Correa has been playing decently. They have been on this streak without 3 of their best players for a majority of the time, and their pitching staff has figured out a way to turn it around. So, yes, I really think so. Just because baseball is so much based on momentum and scouting and adjustments
Yep.
that the coaches have a sample size now. They've gone out and they've executed on those changes, and the results are there. They're winning clutch games. They might not score runs for 7 innings, but in the 8th and ninth, they get the bullpen out there to play against on the other team, and they're winning those games. So, and the schedule is going to get tougher, though. They're going to the Yankees after this Toronto series.
It's
Toronto's
going to be
might
tough.
win the next 2. Yeah. Then they're at Cleveland, who's
Oh,
leading the
boy.
division. Yep. And somebody knows about Cleveland. Then they're at Washington. Then they're home against Texas and Kansas City and at Houston and at New York. Those are all crazy series. Kansas City would never really worry about. They're the same record as the Twins pretty much.
Yeah.
Texas, they had a great year last year. They're still playing really well, even though their division's a little bit down. So I think by the early part of June, once we play the Yankees twice, and then we go to the other teams, Pittsburgh, Colorado, Oakland, Tampa. Baseball's very cyclical on its schedule.
Yep.
And the Twins didn't do so well at the beginning. Well, they're playing the Dodgers. I mean, yeah, you're not going to play very well against the Dodgers. Nobody does. So I think the schedules dictate part of that. And some other day we can go into the stats as to how they succeed against certain teams. I know a lot of that. I just don't have it ready today. But against the Central Division and against the West Division, they're playing really, really well. In the East, if they can squeak out 500 against the East, they will probably easily win their division. They're already in the wild card position right now. They're back in the playoffs in theory. But Toronto learned last year why that doesn't mean much. You have to go to the other team's building. You have to win 2 out of 3. You don't get a home game. And there's a road wild card team. You need to win your division. So there's still a lot of clout in winning your division for sure in baseball. And the Twins are well on their way to that. I think they have a great chance just because of, again, the pitching and the schedule and the adjustments they've made. And the players coming back are going to be insane. So hold on, Twins fans. I know we're worried about injuries, but there's a lot of hope there. And if they can just time out August and September to have everybody healthy, just like hockey, if everybody's healthy at the end of the year, basketball too, if nobody's injured at the end of the year going into the playoffs, you have a much better chance. So,
yeah, my
yeah.
plan is to be at a lot of Twins games this summer. Obviously June is a wash. I'll be over at the World Games in Germany, but when I come back, if the Twins are still rolling, even if they're not rolling, Target Field is a really, really good venue to go watch games, especially when the weather's nice. My plan is to be at a lot of games this summer.
Yeah, I want to go to. I'm also very busy. I'm not going to Europe for the same reasons as you, but I will be there as well with my son, and we'll probably do a show from the location to be undetermined yet. We'll surprise you from where we are. It's a gift to him for his graduation in lieu of what other parents might give. Where my son and I are taking a trip, so that's going to be a lot of fun. So on to another transition we love to do here. We're going to talk about a different sport that we haven't really heard about before on this podcast.
I heard a rumor about you, Tony. I heard a rumor that you are a savant, an aficionado when it comes to the sport of pickleball. And I know this sport is growing. Obviously, I spend a lot of time in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and there are arenas going up everywhere. I hear my players talking about pickleball. Students on campus
Wow.
are talking about pickleball. So I know it's growing. And last time you and I had a conversation, I know you're really, really passionate about the sport. So educate the viewers, educate me about this fantastic growing sport of pickleball.
So, what I love about pickleball is that most people view it as an old people sport. Now, I am a little older. I wouldn't say old people. I'm not willing to give myself that tag yet. But compared to like a 23-year-old on the basketball court, yes, it's an old people sport in the view of the public because it started with older people, right? They're like, hey, I can't play tennis anymore. There's this guy that invented this weird sport. Well, it looks like you're pounding around a wiffle ball, some paddles, and you don't have to run as far. The courts are smaller. And so when I equate it to people, I usually say this. I say, you know what a tennis court is, how big it is? You know how hard it is for people to just show up and play tennis? It's really hard. It's pretty intimidating. You're not just going to show up to a public tennis court, put your racket in the thing, and say, let's play with whoever's there. You'll get
Right.
slaughtered. It's a very serious sport. Pickleball is the opposite of tennis in terms of skills to enjoy. That's the best way I would describe it.
Yep.
And the other way is imagine you're standing on a ping pong table. That's what pickleball feels like because the space is so much smaller.
Yep.
The ball is harder. It's like a hard wiffle ball. And the paddles are kind of like large ping pong paddles, like very large ping pong paddles. They have surfaces and techniques and all these things. We won't get into that today, but basically, to enjoy it, you can go to Dick's, unsponsored sporting goods store, buy a couple of cheap paddles and a ball, go to the park with your buddy or three other buddies and play 2-on-2, which most people like doubles, and just have fun. That's the gist of it. So I just became a coach, a certified coach,
That's awesome.
and it's basically to coach beginners and people who are a little bit more advanced, getting a little bit better. I'm not at the highest levels yet. I am going down to a tournament at the end of the month in Georgia to play at a national regional. I'm going to play singles, which is not normal. Most people play pickleball in doubles. It's just two people on each side, and it's not a lot of running, and it's more fun to learn. And there are moments where anybody can come out of that and go, hey, that was a lot of fun for the first time. Whereas bowling or any other sport that's enjoyable, that's a basic recreation sport, is more, it costs money to show up. Other people might have better equipment and they can do better right away. Pickleball at the beginning levels is just fun. That's the main thing I would say is it's just fun. Now, what I've done is the last year and a half to 2 years, I took on the sport more seriously gradually as I started to play against better and better players. I started to ask people, well, how are you doing this? I went to YouTube, learned a lot of lessons. I'm going to start a YouTube channel separately someday. I haven't gotten around to it because I'm a little busy, with lessons on how to do certain things and what tactics you can have in your head as you get up the levels and you play, kind of like ping pong.
Yeah.
You can get out a ping pong table, right? You hit the ball back and forth with your wife, with your friend, or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you watch the high levels of ping pong, it's absolutely insane. And that's the same thing with pickleball, right? You can play and just have fun. I can play left-handed with anybody and have fun. I don't have to hit the ball hard at you. I can just have fun just hanging around too. But if you start playing against people who are, the ratings are like, they start at 2.5 is the lowest level rating. I don't know why. It's similar to tennis ratings. Then it goes all the way up to like 5.0, 6.0, 7.0. And the pros, I don't even know what the numbers are for them. You started at 2.5, and if you're coordinated and you played paddle sports at all, or you just have good athletic ability, you'll be to a 3.5 pretty quickly. So I'm coaching people from between 2.5 and 3.5. And once they get to 4.0 and above, or kind of at where I'm at right now, I'll defer coaching to people who are 5.0s and pros above me, right? It's just like any other sport.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun. Go out and grab a couple of paddles, grab a ball, have fun with your friends on the court. Give us some comments about what you think about it. That's all I'll get into it today, unless you have a couple other questions for me, because I think
No,
it's fun.
no, it really seems like a fun sport. If I had two good knees, I would be totally into that sport. A good friend of mine is a Minnesota Viking great. His name is John Turner, aka JT, and he was big in racquetball. He was one of the top racquetball players in the United States. Really, really into it. He loves racket sports or paddle sports. I haven't talked to him in a little bit, But I guarantee you that JT has probably tried pickleball, and I bet he's really good at it. And it's just a
Yeah.
growing sport. And, I know you teach it. I know you love it. So I thought it would be, a good idea just to educate our viewers a little bit of it. Maybe there are some people out there that haven't heard of it yet that'll pick it up just from this broadcast, because I think it's a fantastic sport.
Yeah, just go on YouTube, watch an intro to pickleball video. You'll be understanding the rules, which are pretty basic. The scoring is slightly complicated, but it's not nearly as difficult as like bowling, trying to add things up.
Yeah.
Basically, each person gets one serve on either side of the doubles team, and when your serve is stopped, then it goes to your other player. You don't get two serves like in tennis to get the ball in, you just get one. So you're not seeing it's underhand serving. So again, think about tennis. You walk out there, it's an overhand serve. You get two chances to get in. So the first serve is probably going to be crushed at you so that the guy can try to dominate the point. Pickleball's not like that. It's
Okay.
one serve. It's
Okay.
underhand. It's and so the knees comment, like you said, half of the training I got during the certification clinic was about people who have similar issues where they think of a hard court sport
Yep.
and they think, no, 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 I'm not going to do this. And basically, it comes down to this: if you can walk crisply, and you don't have to worry about running in this sport. You just have to worry about, can I move towards the net when the ball is in a certain area, and can I reach to my sides and hit the ball and bend over. So there are people I played with that are 75, 80 years old that do have bad knees, and they play 2 hours a day because
Wow.
they don't have to move a lot. That's what's fun
Wow.
about it. Now,
Yeah.
if you played singles, yeah, you wouldn't want to touch singles with a 10-foot pole. It would hurt. The knees would not be happy, right? Think of,
Yeah.
it's incredibly fast, and you're running and you're sprinting your side to side. It's kind of like doing killers in basketball. Like, it's just insane. But
Yeah.
doubles is fun. You
Yeah.
could play doubles. We should get your wife and I and my wife and I together and just play once for half an hour and then throw bags or something for half an hour and have a drink, because it's fun and it's not too bad on the knees. You'd be surprised. So no matter what your injury status is, you should try it because it's fun. You can just build up to playing a little bit longer if you want to. So
Awesome.
it's a great time.
Awesome.
Well, I don't know if we got anything else. You got anything else you want to bring up today? Are we good?
No, I think we did a really good job of covering pickleball. We finally gave some time to the twins.
Yeah,
They've
a
earned
few
it. We
minutes.
gave them some time. And then we had an opportunity to, make our blood pressure go down a little bit by venting about the Minnesota Timberwolves. So all in all, I thought it was a good day.
Yeah. And again, we've had a great show, a great time with you guys. Hopefully you're checking us out. Like and subscribe, like Lionel always says. We are Legit Takes. It is May 11th, our fourth show. There will be more coming. Can't promise you when, but hopefully the Wolves will win on Sunday. Enjoy the day. Take care.